The New Orleans Saints scheme changes have been fun and easily identified, but let me tell you how they'll help win games if properly executed in 2024. We got all that and a little bit of lagniappe for you on today's episode of Locked On Saints.
You are Locked On Saints, your daily New Orleans Saints podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is good, Who Dat Nation and Who Dat family? I am your host, Ross Jackson, New Orleans native, your New Orleans Saints expert and credentialed member of the media covering those New Orleans Saints as a senior writer and reporter over at Saints News Network. And on today's episode of Locked On Saints, I'm going to tell you why Payton Turner has all new life in what has become the most important season of his career thus far. We've been talking a lot about the New Orleans Saints' new offensive scheme helping the offensive side of the football, but the fact of the matter is that the defense is getting better here as well. I'll tell you what Demario Davis had to say about that. And we're going to kick everything off today by taking a look at not only the New Orleans Saints offensive improvements and the scheme changes, but I want to tell you why they matter and how they'll help win games in 2024 if properly executed. We appreciate you very much as always for being here. And today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Appreciate you very much as always, making Locked On Saints your first listen of the day and being an everydayer here on the show, which is a proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The New Orleans Saints are in a situation here to where they're ushering in this new offense, and we're seeing it kind of in pieces over at OTAs. I told you earlier this week about the usage of Taysom Hill, the introduction of the quote-unquote cheat motion, which I'll re-explain here in a little bit, as well as we're just watching this team attack the middle of the field. But beyond just telling you that they're doing it, I wanted to discuss today why it's important and how it can help this team win games. And I want to start that by looking at Taysom Hill, because Taysom Hill's usage and the things that he's being asked to do are very important. Not only is he somebody that's lining up at tight end, that's lining up at wide receiver in the slot, all the different things that we've typically seen him do, lining up at fullback, stuff like that, but he's even lining up as like the lone running back in shotgun formations. And so you can just imagine all the fun things that you can do with a guy like Taysom Hill. And schematically, those things can be a lot of fun. Faking it to him for those play actions, handing it off to him, allowing him to be a lead blocker, putting him at quarterback, of course. That game plan is not going to go away, utilizing him at quarterback. That's just not what they're working on right now. And of course, continuing to use him as a receiver. He had an over an 80% catch rate last year when he had his career high in targets and career high in catches, receiving yards, all of that. So seeing this team ready to build off of that, I think is positive. And if you think about him as somebody that could be utilized in the same way as San Francisco 49ers fullback Kyle Juszczyk, who you can hear guys like Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker talk about all day long over at Locked On 49ers, it's clear to see how Taysom Hill fits into that role. And Kyle Juszczyk is kind of used as a little bit more of like just not your traditional fullback. He's used as a pass catcher. He's used as a lead blocker. He's used as a runner. He runs routes from the backfield. He runs routes from out wide, from tight end, wherever. You can see Taysom Hill kind of doing all those things. But the reason why this is important, in my opinion, comes down to Taysom Hill's production over the course of the last 3 years. Since 2021, Taysom Hill has led this team in receiving and rushing touchdowns combined with 20, one ahead of Alvin Kamara, who's at 19. And again, that does not include passing touchdowns. He has an additional 7 passing touchdowns over the course of the past 3 years that are independent of this 20 touchdown number, that are only from rushing, receiving. So the more that you put him in position to do those things, and bear in mind, he did that at the ages of 31, 32, and 33, while also being the skill position player who's made the most appearances on a game count basis, 44 total games over the stretch of that stretch of time as well. Now, guys like Chris Olave and stuff like that didn't join until partway through that. So, that's obviously something to keep in mind. But you see Taysom Hill being a part of games. You see Taysom Hill scoring touchdowns, but you haven't seen him be used consistently enough. That doesn't make you stop and ask the question, say it with me, Where's Taysom Hill, right? Now, the question becomes the question that the defense asks, which I think is good. So I think that's one way that helps you win games. You get your leading scorer for the past 3 seasons involved in many more aspects of the game, therefore on the field more, therefore utilized more. Not going to see a lot of negativity over that as long as he stays healthy. And again, as long as these things are properly executed. We're only seeing OTAs right now. We got to see what happens when they get out on the field. I spoke in our bonus episode on Tuesday about the cheat motion. The cheat motion is when you got 2 receivers, one is lined up on the inside, one is lined up on the outside. And before the snap, the one from the inside kind of bends around the receiver on the outside so that the ball is snapped as they hit the line of scrimmage. So they already have a little bit of a running start before the ball is snapped. I compare this all the time to the Canadian football activity or the Canadian football practice of, somebody starting X many yards behind the line of scrimmage, running up to the line of scrimmage and the ball being snapped there. How does this help you win games? Well, one of the things that I think that this helps you with is that it is something that is specifically built to maximize your best playmakers. Okay. Think back to last season. I talk about this all the time. Think back to last season and what the big complaint was, right? This scheme is not good enough to support the talent, right? That was always a thing. Well, the Saints are too talented a team to be losing games like this. The Saints are too talented a team to lack creativity on offense. Here's your creativity. Okay. I talked about the ingredients to a successful offense in yesterday's episode where we talked about creativity. We talked about simplicity. And we talked about, what was my third one? Precision. I had to go back to my notes. Great recipe, Ross. You can't even memorize it. But creativity, simplicity, and precision. Here's a part of the creativity, right? And here's a part of the simplicity too, because what you're doing is you're taking your guys that have this top-end world-class speed. Chris Olave, Rashid, Shaheed, Bub Means is going to be a part of this as well. And you're adding something to the offense that supports them, that gets them immediately to their top speed or very quickly after the snap to their top speed so that they can take advantage of what they might be able to do down the field or even just using it as a decoy to open up opportunities for other players. Let's go to that next because I think this is the other thing. I keep talking about how the Saints have been attacking the middle of the field. Here's why that matters. When you keep everything in front of the quarterback, that's directly in front of the quarterback, it's an easier game. When you're going out towards the perimeters and things like that, especially if you're lined up on, let's say, the right hash mark, right? So there's little dotted lines that run from end zone to end zone, those little hashed lines. Basically, the ball gets placed there if a play ends on the right side of the field. If a play ends on the left side of the field, then the ball goes to the left hash mark. If a play ends in the middle of the field, then it goes to the middle of the field. So there's 3 different places laterally where you can start a play. So if you're taking a snap from the right hash mark and your best option is down the left sideline, you're adding yardage. That's called the field side, by the way. There's more field there. And then there's the boundary side, which is the one that's closer to the boundary. It's a longer distance to throw a ball 50 yards down on the opposite side of the field than it is to throw a ball 50 yards downfield on the same side of the field. So the thing about attacking the middle of the field is that A, there's a lot of vulnerability there in today's defenses. And B, it gives you an opportunity to keep everything right in front of the quarterback. Simplicity. And then you can add things like the creativity of the cheat motion that draws a lot of attention to what's going on the outside, makes a linebacker look that way, makes a safety look that way. And then all of a sudden, the middle of the field is open. And then you're taking the simplistic route or the simple pass of attacking the middle of the field. And if you can do that precisely, then you got yourself an explosive offense. So that's the thing. So when I highlight these things like, oh, look how Taysom Hill is being used. Oh, look, they added the cheat motion. Oh, look, they're attacking the middle of the field. This is why, because each of these elements folds into one another, complements one another, and on its own, individually, as a standalone concept, can help you make a difference with your offense and therefore help you win games. Now, it's not just the offense that's getting better with this new scheme, or that's looking like it's getting better with this new scheme. This has some major benefits for the New Orleans Saints defense as well. And Demario Davis even went so far as to tell us so. We got that coming up for you as we continue on with today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode of Locked On Saints is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Hey, if you live in Minnesota, you just got treated to a Game 5 Minnesota Timberwolves extending the series with the Dallas Mavericks, avoiding the sweep in a way that the Indiana Pacers could not. But if you're out in Minnesota, this is a great opportunity, or in the Minneapolis area, Minnesota area, great opportunity to use Game Time, because this is exactly what Game Time is for, last minute tickets. And every time that a playoff series gets extended, that there is a last minute ticket. Now, of course, I know I'm talking to Saints fans here, and there's some marquee games coming up this season. The Raiders coming to town, the Broncos coming to town for Thursday Night Football. That's huge. Not able to plan too far ahead, no sweat. Game Time is the place to go for last minute tickets. They got flash deals. They've got zone deals. They've got all-in pricing. You can see the view of the field from your seat before you even buy the ticket. You can take all the guesswork out of buying tickets from Game Time by checking out Game Time today. So download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, family. We've talked all about how the new offensive scheme changes are impacting the New Orleans Saints offense in a positive way. But let's not get it twisted. The defense is benefiting from what the offense is doing now in a big, big way. We appreciate you very much. As always, make it Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out the Locked On Sports Today 24/7 stream, the first of its kind when it comes to national sports over on YouTube. All the biggest stories from around the world of sports without all the yelling and screaming that you'll catch from some of those other networks. Go and check it out today. Catch what the local experts have to say about the biggest stories, the ones that know them best, by heading over to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube. Check out the 24/7 feed. You can also find it for free on the Amazon Fire TV channels app as well. Proud part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we spoke with Demario Davis for a little while on Tuesday after practice, and a question came up that I thought was really good. And it was something that we had talked about the first week of OTAs, but it was great to kind of get this insight from a defensive player, and not just any defensive player, but probably one of your best and most influential defensive players on your roster in Demario Davis. So there's been a lot of stuff that's been taken from Demario Davis's presser. He spoke about he and Derek Carr doing a night of worship over at the Mahalia Jackson Theater over in Louis Armstrong Park, which I am walking distance from, so better believe I will be there on June 11th. If you're there, if you see me, say hi, as we always say. There was a lot of stuff taken too about him saying, you look at Kansas City Chiefs, I bet they have 100% attendance and all those other things. People took that kind of as a shot across the bow to guys that weren't there, but really it was just kind of Demario explaining why he was there and all that. But I thought one of the most important things to come from his press conference was the idea that the defense is improving right now because of the new system that the offense is deploying. And one of the biggest reasons why that is the case is because, as Demario Davis said, they're seeing these concepts now that they otherwise wouldn't see until they're in season. So all of these concepts that we've discussed, let's catalog them, right? Motion, right? Dealing with motion over on the offensive side. Didn't see a bunch of it in practices, didn't see a bunch of it in games over the course of the past couple of years, all that. And remember what one of the New Orleans Saints defensive biggest issues on defense was? Eye candy, eye discipline, right? Their eyes being caught looking one way when the offense is designing something to go the other way. Again, simplicity with the veil of complexity. That's what this wide zone offense is all about. So now they get to practice against motion. Okay. Play action. They actually didn't fare too terribly against your standard straight drop back play action. I'm the quarterback. I'm taking the snap from under center. I'm going back. I'm pretending to hand the ball off to this running back, and then I'm pulling right back up, looking downfield. It's not something that they consistently struggled against, but hey, they're practicing against it a lot more now than they were before. It's not something to where they have to wait and see how the scouting team brings it to them in order for them to get ready for it. Okay, rollouts, right? The mobile quarterback problem, the dreaded mobile quarterback problem. In case you're not aware, New Orleans Saints typically have had trouble against mobile quarterbacks. Now, is Derek Carr a mobile quarterback? No, I wouldn't call him a mobile quarterback. I would call him an athletic quarterback that can stretch plays and that can move a pocket, fine, and that can extend plays, fine, but I wouldn't call him a dual threat quarterback. Let me say it that way. I wouldn't call him a dual threat quarterback, right? Dual threat quarterbacks are guys like, Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson. You can kind of put Patrick Mahomes in that category as well. You get what I'm saying? Jaden Daniels will be that guy in Washington. So the play action rollout, which has a little bit more of a dynamic look than your standard drop back play action, which I just described, but the rollout instead is something that kind of fakes to an outside run to one side, and then the quarterback turns over the upfield shoulder or the downfield shoulder, upfield shoulder, in order to be able to get back around to the opposite side and then look for concepts of receivers that are breaking over to their side. Now you could see what's called a throwback, which is actually going to throw to the same side as where you faked the run. But typically you're looking for routes that are going in the same direction as you're running as a quarterback. Just easier to throw those passes. So now that's something that the Saints are practicing against now, as opposed to having to wait until they either catch it in a game or deal with it ahead of time in practice with the scouting team or with the scout teams. And when I talk about scout teams, by the way, scout team is typically that like second team, or what we would talk about in like first team, which are your starters, second team, which is your like immediate backups, and then third team, which is typically like your reserve guys. We talk about that in like training camp and stuff like that. Your second team, your backups, will sometimes run a scout team. So your offense has to play against a defense, and your defense has to play against an offense. But typically, your defense is not only playing against your offense for practice purposes, but they're playing against a scouting team version of the opponent's offense in order to get used to and ready for that. So that's a little bit of what that scout team is about, without a lot of nuance, right? That's like the general overview of it. Let's go back to motion for a moment, because it's not just your standard motion of a receiver moving from one side to the other. It's a receiver going from one side to about, the tight end, and then turning around and running back out to the outside. It's the cheat motion that we just talked about. It's motioning guys from the backfield to out wide, or from out wide to the backfield, or jet sweep motions and things like that. These are all things that can take a defense and make the players look where they're not supposed to be looking. They're practicing against it. Now, attacking the middle of the field, we know the New Orleans Saints have gotten gashed on like crossing routes. We see this here and there. Maybe certainly less so now than we saw it in like 2014, 15, and 16 with those abysmal defensive performances then. But we still see times where crossers and attack in the middle of the field can sometimes be a little bit of a headache for New Orleans. The New Orleans offense is now attacking the middle of the field now, so they're seeing it earlier. So that I think is some of the stuff that I think was really, really important from Demario Davis's presser that might be getting a little bit overlooked. Now, which players are most impacted by this? To an extent, everyone is, but I think your secondary and your linebackers, particularly your Mike linebacker, is a big one. Demario Davis also said that when he lines up, because he plays the Mike, he doesn't really think about himself playing against the other quarterback. He thinks about himself game planning and playing against the offensive coordinator, right? So when you're talking about kind of getting used to some of these concepts and seeing these things, practicing against them and all that, Demario Davis gets a wealth of knowledge from starting to practice against this in May, as opposed to September, October, November, December, whenever, January, all that. So I think that is another one of those things. So I would say that everyone is impacted by this, right? The defensive line gets impacted by the zone run game and how to defend against that. The defensive line is impacted in that they get a better sort of edification on how to defend the rollout, like what their responsibilities are, where they're supposed to be, all these other things. But really, like, it's the linebackers in the secondary, the guys that have to cover all of this, that get most immediately impacted as well. And I would say the heavy communicators in your linebacker core and on your third level in your secondary, Tyrann Mathieu, who calls a lot of those, makes a lot of those calls and does a lot of that communication from the safety spot. And then, of course, as well as Jonathan Abram. And then, of course, Demario Davis, who, of course, calls the defense. So I would highlight both of those guys in particular, or both of those roles in particular, but really, like, everyone is impacted by this. So not only is the offense getting better, but the defense is being challenged in a unique, specific way at a much earlier timeline than they're accustomed, and that helps them get better too. Coming up next, one guy just got all new life. It was because of an unfortunate situation, but boy, does Payton Turner have a big time opportunity ahead of him, and what is a big time year that could be his last in New Orleans. We got that coming up for you as we continue on and wrap up today's episode of Locked On Saints, part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Let's get it, Who Dat Nation. It is Payton Turner, who now has all new life in what is the most important year of his career following a devastating and unfortunate injury, to Tano Pasio, New Orleans Saints defensive lineman. Let's break that all down. And I'm going to tell you as well why Dallin Holker's opportunity continues to grow as well, the undrafted free agent tight end that everyone is very, very excited about. We appreciate you very much, as always, for being here for another episode of Locked On Saints. So forget to go and check out the Locked On Sports Today podcast as well. Your boy's guest hosting all week. Come through. Come hear me chat about national stories and do interviews and all of this stuff. Come show some love. Come show some support. Great show, too. About 25, 30 minutes. Give you everything you need to know from around the world of sports. Different from the live stream. It's its own show, and it's super, super fun. So make sure you come through and check that out. And don't forget to also come back for tomorrow's episode. We are your team every day, after all. I'm going to tell you, here's what we're going to talk about. The Saints Hall of Fame is making a big announcement that I think you're going to be very, very, very excited about. And we're going to chat all about it. So we're going to break that down. We're also going to take a look at why I expect that Bub Beans will have a slow but sure role with the New Orleans Saints by the 2024 season's end. And I want to project the team's defensive line rotation as a continuation of this very conversation. Bars. So where I want to kick off this final portion of the show is take a look at Payton Turner, who's got a big opportunity now ahead of him in what is the most important season so far of his young career. Now, he's only had 3 seasons so far. He's in a contract year. The Saints did not pick up his 5th-year option for next year. Doesn't mean that they wouldn't re-sign him, but now he's got to earn that opportunity. He's got to kind of earn that second contract. Now, he struggled to be out on the field. I think this is one of the biggest things that he's going to have to clear. He's going to have to prove that he can be healthy. If you look back at 2021, his rookie season, 143 defensive snaps. 2022, 170. Last year, 25 defensive snaps. Just to kind of put that in perspective for you, he had only 8 snaps more than Jason Pierre-Paul. Yeah. Remember that? Remember that? Pretty insane, right? So the thing that I highlight when it comes to Jason Pierre-Paul, when it comes to Payton Turner right now, is that he actually has kind of this widened gap, this now widened gap to a role that could be really, really good for him. Tano Pasio, as Dennis Allen told us, tore his Achilles in the offseason, getting ready for a camp, OTAs, all that other stuff, as far as I understand it. That means he's not going to be ready for the early portion of the season. Now, we have seen the Saints, Alex Okafor, Sheldon Rankins, we've seen guys make really, really quick returns, or quicker than expected. Let me say it that way. Quicker than expected returns on Achilles injuries. We'll see if they get another one in Tano Pasio. And both those guys were pretty dang good when they came back from that Achilles injury. But in the meanwhile, this gives Payton Turner a really unique position to finding a role in this in this defense, where if he can stay healthy, he'll be able to consistently contribute in a way that gives him a big opportunity to prove, hey, I deserve that second contract, even if it's a short-term contract. And it's taking over a little bit of Tano Pasio's role. Tano Pasio, 6'7", 289 pounds. Payton Turner, 6'6", 270 pounds. Both of these guys have inside-outside versatility. Tano Pasio played 67 snaps on the inside last year. Not a ton, but was pretty big there towards the end of the season, I'd say from about week 13 on. Okay, where you saw, where he was playing like 8, 12, 7, 11 snaps on the interior on a per game basis. So much higher than his 5, 6, 2 early on in the season. See what I'm saying? The numbers kind of ticked up towards the end. So Payton Turner, who in 2022 played the most snaps that he's played over on defense, which was 170, took a few of those snaps, not a ton, it was like 9, right? So we're talking like less than 10% here, but took a few of those snaps on the defensive interior. So if he can show you that he can play, inside and out over the course of this training camp, then there's a real role that can be carved out for him where he can say, hey, let me get the snaps so that I can show you that I deserve to be here. And I think he would like to do that. The biggest thing is going to be, of course, as I continuously say, him staying healthy. Now, here's the other thing, too, is that this also has a big impact on Chase Young's snap distribution. We saw Cameron Jordan last year take 770 snaps over on defense. It was over 70% of snaps. I expect that that's going to tick down a little bit And so Tano Passanio, who took 37% of snaps last year, a lot of that's going to go to Chase Young. And you're also going to see other guys that end up benefiting, or you're going to see him take other snaps too, like the amount of snaps that Zach Bond took at that spot, X, Y, and Z. Like you're going to see those things. The rotation of Isaiah Foskey early on in the season, things like that. When he was healthy, you get where I'm going there. Like there's going to be snaps to go around when it comes to diminishing a little bit of Cam Jordan snaps, because I imagine he's going to play something like 60, 65%. He'll probably play a career low in snaps in 2024, just based on the talent that they've now assembled at the position. And then Carl Granderson is going to be the lead guy, which was the case last year. 874 snaps for Carl Granderson, 770 for Cam Jordan. Those are the top two guys. The third edge rusher that spent the most time out on the field was Tano Passanio with 406 snaps. Now, again, 67 of those were on the interior, not just on the edge. So he played a little bit of both. But you see what I'm getting at here. Both of these, or this player, Tano Passanio, benefited from the versatility that allowed him to be able to get out on the field. Now, Payton Turner has the opportunity to show that and then earn the opportunities to get out on the field, which then earns him the opportunities to show like, hey, I can be productive. And not only can I be productive, but I can stay healthy with a greater amount of snaps. My body's a little bit more used to it. Matt Ray's doing great things, the director of sports science to help this team out, all those other things. So I do think there's a real opportunity here for Payton Turner to go out there and prove something. I'm not saying he's going to prove it. I'm not saying he's not going to prove it. Way too early for that. But is the opportunity there? 100%. And it just got a little bit more present, right? Just got all new life breathed into that opportunity with the unfortunate Tano Passanio injury. I want to be really careful about trying to make the Passanio injury sound positive. It's not positive. But now there's the next man up mentality, and that next man up needs to be Payton Turner, which is a big time prove it opportunity for him, which is exactly what he should be looking for. Real quick, Dallin Holker, the former Colorado State tight end, now an undrafted free agent tight end coming in, has been so much fun to watch. So much fun to watch. He has been all over the field. He has been utilized all over the place, taking snaps from all over the place, all those different things, like different alignments and stuff like that. I don't mean that he's like taking snaps at running back or anything like that, but like he has the versatility to take snaps out of the backfield. And so I don't know if 2024 is going to be Dallin Holker's year, but if he picks this system up, stays healthy, keeps his head down, does the work this season, 2025 could be a big Dallin Holker year. Typically, tight ends don't have a rookie impact. And obviously, there's exceptions to that. Travis Kelce, we saw Sam Laporta last year be ridiculous. Kyle Pitts kind of had that. So, like, we've seen it around the NFL. Don't get me wrong. They exist. But those are typically superstar level guys that immediately get superstar level treatment. Dallin Holker's probably not going to get superstar level treatment early. He's probably not going to get that many snaps unless he just balls out over the course of training camp and stuff like that. So I'm excited to see him. I really, really am. I think he's the fourth tight end right now. Like if you look at Juwan Johnson, Foster Moreau, and if you include Taysom Hill in that number, even though he's designated as a quarterback, then I would put Dallin Holker probably as the next guy. So I think that he's been fun. I think that he is somebody that will have a role in this offense if he's healthy and if he's on the active roster, even though he's not the most experienced blocker or the most polished blocker. I think that what he can do for you as a pass catching threat is immensely valuable. So I'm really looking forward to seeing him and his opportunities as well. All right, y'all. Appreciate you very much as always. Make it Locked On Saints your first listen of the day every day. Don't forget to go and check out Locked On Pelicans and Locked On LSU as your second listens. And we'll come back here tomorrow for the Saints Hall of Fame announcement. We'll get into Bub Means, and we're also going to, and the big role that I expect him to have by season's end, even though it'll probably be a slow build up there. And we're going to project the defensive line rotation for the New Orleans Saints. Make sure you come through to tomorrow's episode for all that. And if you want even more, let me remind you as well about the Locked On Saints Insider Program. Text Who Dat to 504-285-7473, or you can head over to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Saints or click the link in the description, and you can become a Locked On Saints Insider, which is going to get you exclusive Q&As with me, one-on-one contact with me, which is going to be awesome during training camp. And just to be honest too, like this helps support the show. It's a subscription service, 14 days for free, $4.99 after that if you want to stick around. And it helps me be at training camp. It helps support the show, all these other things. I've had a lot of people ask about merch, donations, all of this stuff. Can't take any of that stuff. But if you're interested in contributing, joinsubtext.com/LockedOnSaints is the way to go. And you get a little something extra for it, which is really, really important to me. If you're going to give me something, I want to make sure I'm giving something back. So that's the way that it goes. I appreciate you very much. As always, Make Locked On Saints part of your day, part of your routine for saying yes to me and the show. As always, if you see me, please say hi. And if you need anything else around your New Orleans Saints in between these episodes, make sure you follow me on your favorite social media at Ross Jackson, NOLA. Hit me up. Let me know how the family's doing. Let me know how you living. Let me know how you momming them. And trust Who Dat Nation, I'll holla at you.